All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Sorry, running just a couple minutes late here. But if you got your questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be below the video if you were on a mobile device or a smaller screen. If you were on a laptop, desktop computer, it's usually going to be to the right on the video. So I start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So I'll be starting with John W. My glasses are just really dirty right now. I'm going to clean my glasses up real quick and then I can actually see. So I start with questions that were asked up to an hour before, just so I can try to answer questions for people who I think are here, waiting to see their questions get answered. So if you posted your question at like 9 o'clock last night or something like that, odds are I'm guessing you're not here waiting to get your question get answered. But hey, if you are, no worries. Just copy and paste your question in there, and then it'll get answered at some point in the office hours. Get this cleaned up so I can actually see. All right, ready to rock here. So John W. John W. says, I haven't played golf in a couple of years and am now 69. My first driving range session, the swing was slow and a bit awkward, but surprisingly straight. Now that I can play again, is there an approach that would suit an older golfer like myself to get back into the game? If you're looking to, kind of get your swing looking a little bit better, I'd really just focus on the top speed golf system. That's really fine that you may not be able to get as big of turn as you used to, but it's still important to get a good shoulder turn. It's still important to keep the spine stable throughout the swing. It's important to get some lag. It's important, all the pieces that we talk about in the top speed golf system apply whether you're 5 years old or 85 years old. It applies to everybody. So that's the approach that I would take, is I would work through the top speed golf system. That'd be my best recommendation. If you're looking to gain some distance, it's going to be the 20-minute distance fix. Now, I know you mentioned that you're 69 years of age. If you are capable of going out and swinging as hard as you can for 20 swings, then I would recommend doing the 20-minute distance fix for sure to help you get some distance. But if you're not, then I would just stick to the top speed golf system and continue to work through the system and get those pieces right. We also have we have a course that for anything that ails you, basically. So your putting, your chipping, your pitching, your wedge game, any of that. If there's any issues with those, I would highly recommend working through those systems. So basically, we have a system of drills for all of those pieces of the game that are set up for you just to work through. And again, it's intended for all ages, no matter what. We're still playing the same game. So that's what I recommend: top speed golf system plus pitching, chipping, putting system. To get to any of these courses, and there's 20 plus courses included in your membership, to get to any of them, all you got to do is select the house icon at the top of the page. That will take you to the home page, and then that'll take you to the home page, and then that will you'll see all the courses on the page below there. So Theory M says, it's about the impact drill that you sent us yesterday. I have tried this drill years ago, and I got some trouble with the closed face at the top of the backswing. What about the forearm rotation at the takeaway? I love your drill, the perfect takeaway. That's improve a lot my back at the takeaway. I guess I'm not really sure exactly what you're talking about. It's about the impact that we sent yesterday. Let me see here. What video was sent yesterday? There wouldn't have been any video sent yesterday, maybe on Tuesday. So the videos, usually the new videos go out on Tuesdays usually, but maybe where you are, it's Wednesday. So I'm not sure exactly what video. So improve impact in the golf swing magic drill. So I don't remember exactly what's in that one. Let me go to the So a lot of the videos we shoot, okay, so it looks like just in the thumbnail here, it's talking about getting that lead wrist in a little bit more powerful position. So basically, and again, the perfect takeaway, I'm not really sure. So there's 500, 700 videos maybe on the website. Unfortunately, I don't know what's in every single video. So it's hard for me to know exactly what you're talking about. But basically, you know, when you have forward shaft lean at impact, you have to use your wrists in a certain way in order to square up the face. So if you're someone who doesn't have forward shaft lean at impact, your wrists are going to be more like this, right? They're going to be where you're pushing the club through and you're releasing the club early, and that's squaring up the face. So if I were to just push my hands forward and keep my lead wrist like this and my trail wrist kind of flat like that, and I just push my hands forward, look what happens to the face. Let me put my angle finder on here. So if I keep these wrist angles like this, okay, and then I push my hand forward, look what happens to that club face, right? So I have forward shaft lean now, but the club face is wide open. So when we do this, when we get the handle more forward, we have to turn our wrists like this to square up that face. And that's what we need to do at impact. Now, as far as the takeaway is concerned, whatever you do with the club in the takeaway, you have to do in the downswing. So basically, if you bring the club back in your takeaway and you really kind of roll open the face like this, well, now in the downswing, you've got to do that into impact. So what that basically does is it's a wasted movement, right? So if you're really opening the face in the backswing, you got to close the face in the downswing. And usually people who really open the face in the backswing will typically come over the top, right? Because a lot of times people, to try to close the face, they'll also swing to the left. They'll swing to the left to try to get the face to point to the left. But the reality of what happens is that they're just swinging to the left, and now that's making their path go to the left, and a lot of times they hit a huge slice. Because the face is open at impact, they swing to the left, hit a huge slice. So what we want to do is basically, now we don't need to go back like this. This would be really closing the face, and then we would actually have to open the face in the downswing. You're just keeping the club face square. What I typically recommend for students is to essentially keep the club face square the entire time. It's just bending back the wrists and then turning through. So at address, if we're like this, right, we need to do a little bit of that as we come into impact to be able to do that. Now, some players will do it as they go up to the top. Some players will be more like this, and then as they come down, they're doing that motion, right? So it's really up to you whether you do. But if you want to get forward shaft lean, we got to be doing this. We got to be doing this with our wrists. We can't have an impact position where we're like this if we want forward shaft lean, because the face is just going to be wide open if you do that. You've got to turn that handle a little bit as you come into impact to square that up if you want to have the shaft leaning forward. So Paul B says, I'm having trouble with the angle of my shoulders, keeping them square and aligned to the target. Any recommendations? So you want to make sure that you have a spine tilt. If you don't have a spine tilt, you're typically going to have trouble with the shoulders being open at address. So because my trail hand is lower on the grip, right? If I don't have spine tilt here, when I reach for this club, right? So if I'm straight up and down with my spine, if you're looking from that angle, and then if I have my hands like this, I can have my shoulders squared. But since my hand is, my trail hand is lower on the grip and I reach for that, now look, my shoulders are open, right? So what do I have to do to compensate for that is I have to get my trail shoulder lower than my lead shoulder. And that allows me to be able to put my hand lower on the grip by having spine tilt and have my shoulders square, right? So now I can have my shoulders square because I have this tilt. That's part of why we want tilt. Also because of a lot of other factors, but basically that allows me to have my shoulders square at address. So look at your tilt. You want to make sure that you have tilt at address, and that's going to help you to get those shoulders nice and square. So Paul H asks, I am having trouble compressing the ball at impact. Should I use more forward press? Sure, if it helps you. I think you're talking about like a forward press at address. So having the hands more forward at address. Sure, if it helps you. One thing to keep in mind is that just because your hands are in a position at address doesn't mean that that's what they're going to be at impact. I see a lot of people all the time. I get several students who will send me videos where their address is like this. They have a lot of forward press here, but then at impact, they're like this, right? So just because you're in a position at address doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen at impact. But hey, if having a forward press at address helps you to have more compression or more forward shaftling at impact, then yeah, go for it. But keep in mind that just pressing your hands forward is not going to make that happen. So if you're struggling with forward shaftling, typically it's because you're releasing the club early, right? So if we're releasing this club early, meaning where this club is coming in and it's splitting my forearms, right, where it's passing in front of the hands, that's where that club's releasing. In the Tuscany golf system, we talk about in the straight line release course how we want this club to be releasing out in front. So basically where this, I'll choke up on this club so you can see, where this club is splitting my forearms here, we want that to be about 45 degrees out in front. So if I rewind this to impact, now you can see that's where the forward shaftling happening. And then I release it out in front. If I'm releasing it right here, just past impact, and then I rewind that to impact, you can see that's not a lot of forward shaftling. Or if I'm releasing at the golf ball, you can see there's no forward shaftling here, and the club's splitting my forearms. So that's what's going on there. Is you're more than likely releasing the club early, and a forward press may or may not help with that. But I wouldn't necessarily expect it to make a huge difference. It could, it's possible, but odds are typically it doesn't make much of a difference. Usually you're going to get in this very close to the same impact position, whether you have a forward press or if you held the club back like this, you would probably still get into a similar impact position. So I wouldn't necessarily expect it to. If you're wanting to really work on, you got to go straight to the cause and work on that, and that'd be most likely the straight line release course. Now, if you look at what I would do is I would video your swing. Now look at it from face on and down the line, mostly face on, and I would see where your swing lines up with the Tuscany golf system. Right. So if your spine is good, if you got a nice stable fluid spine, you're set up angled away at address, you're angled away at the top, and then you get more angled away at impact, that's going to make it a lot easier for you to get that straight line release. But if these angles are way off, so let's say you're set up vertically and then you go up to the top and you're like this, and then you come into impact and you're like this. Well, that's a spine angle thing, right? So you need to get your spine angles fixed. Now, improving your spine angles or getting your spine angles where you need to be doesn't mean you're automatically going to start releasing that club out in front. But I will tell you right now, it's going to be dang near impossible to release this club out in front if your spine is like this at impact. If it's straight up and down at impact, you're going to have a really hard time. It's going to be impossible, basically. So you got to go through the pieces. There's a reason why the straight line release is the last piece, is because all of the pieces build on the next one. So we have our stable fluid spine. That's the first piece. We have our power turn. That's the second piece. We have our lag, right? We have some lag here in the start of the downswing. We have our compression line, which is at impact. We want this to be all lined up. And then the last piece is the straight line release. So I would look at the pieces of your swing and see what needs the work, right? So I'd start with the stable fluid spine. If that looks good, go on to the power turn. If that looks good, then go to the lag course. If that looks good, then go to the compression line course. And if that looks good, then go to the straight line release. A big mistake that I see people make is that they early release in their swing, right? And automatically they go straight to the straight line release course. That's a huge mistake, because you're just going to go there and get really frustrated if the other pieces of the Tuscany golf system are off in your swing. If your spine angles are off, that's one of the main ones that I see. People go straight to the straight line release when the spine angles are way off. The stable fluid spine is what sets everything else up. Everything's a lot easier once you get that. So at least make sure your stable fluid spine is good before you move on to the straight line release. But I highly recommend the straight line release if you're trying to work on getting more forward shaftling, more compression on the ball. So real quickly, to get to any of those courses, click the house icon. That'll take you to the homepage. Scroll down the homepage, you'll see a list of all the courses there. Also, you can click the instruction tab, then you can click the Top Speed Golf System and select the courses there. So John A says, I'm still struggling with moving forward on the downswing. I'm working on the step drill, but I just can't consistently repeat when playing. Yeah, so you just need to get more reps in. You know, it's hard to say exactly why that's going on, but, you know, it reminds me of a quote from Tiger. Basically, Tiger said, first I understand what I need to do, then it looks better, then it feels better, then it performs better in practice, then on the course, then in a tournament. So that just kind of describes, you know, the stages that you have to go through. So right now, you understand what you need to do, right? You understand, hey, I need to get a good weight shift to my lead side. And then it starts to look better in your practice. So right now, that sounds like that's where you're at. It's starting to look better in practice, and it's probably starting to feel better as well. You have to keep it working toward it and working on it before it starts feeling better out on the course. And then before it starts feeling better in a competition, right? In a tournament or something like that. So just keep sticking with it. It's hard to say exactly what the problem might be. You know, there might be something hanging you up. It's impossible for me to know. But I would keep working through it. Look at Clay doing the video. Look at yourself on video, making sure that you're matching what he's doing. And if you are, then it's just going to take more reps to be comfortable with it. But if you're not, you know, try to match what he's doing. So really, really important to look at your swing on video, because what feel isn't always real, right? So, you know, if we feel we're doing something, then the reality might be that we're actually doing something else. So that's why I recommend video your swing. Match it up to what Clay is doing in the step drill video. If it is, then, and you're still having trouble with it, then it's just a matter, it's really just getting more reps in, right? It's getting more reps in. But if there isn't, make the adjustment and then try to match what he's doing in the video. Look at yours on video. You got to look at it on video. We just can't go out there and just do the drill and hope that it actually works, because feel isn't always real, right? So we have to check that and make sure. Some Marie Speed says, hi Q, when swinging an iron at a ball on the ground, the low point of the arc is ahead of the ball, i.e. ball first, then ground, divot ahead of the ball. Because my angle of attack is down, this means the face is open. Not necessarily. Now the move will square the club face, but if my swing path is to the right, do I need to adjust my stance slightly left to ensure my face is square to the target line, especially when hitting on a driver? Swing path to the right, ball outside lead shoulder. This means the club face will be closed. Impact made beyond the low point of the arc. And should I be adjusting my stance with driver slightly to the left to ensure square face? So one thing to keep in mind here is just because the club's working down doesn't mean the face is going to be open. And just because the club is working around, like because it turns the corner, doesn't mean it's going to be closed, right? So basically what I mean is that I could have this club, if this is my, let's say, I'll put this alignment stick down here. So if I got this alignment stick, hopefully you can see that, and let's say that's straight at my target. So this is what I'm saying. This is where the face is open or closed to. It's relative to your target, right? So here's my face square. I can be swinging in to out and actually have my face closed, right? So I'm swinging in to out and down and my face can be closed. I can also swing to the left and have my face open. So just because the club is moving in a direction doesn't mean the face is going to be open or closed. So that's really the first piece, right? And what I would do to square up the face, and I would work more with your grip to work on getting the face more square. So if you're coming into contact, the ball is going to start mostly in the direction of the club face. So if you're coming into contact and the ball is starting way to the right, then that means the face is open. So what I would do is I would adjust your grip. I would actually strengthen your grip. So that would mean turning your wrist more like this on the grip, right? So this would be a weak grip. And then if I take my hands and I go more like this, that would be more of a stronger grip. That's going to help you to close the face more as you're coming into contact. All right. So if you're hitting the ball and you're right-handed, let's assume, and the ball's going to the left, that means that the face is closed. So if you have a very strong grip, you may want to consider weakening it a little bit, right? And that can help you to get the face more square at contact. Same thing with the driver. So with the driver, a lot of times naturally you'll take a stronger grip. The reasoning being that usually you're a little bit wider, the ball's a little bit more forward, so naturally you're going to have a little bit more spine tilt, and naturally that typically makes you take a stronger grip, which helps you to close the face more, right? But hey, let's say that if you're leaving the face open with the driver, right, the ball's starting to the right, then I would adjust your grip, right? Then I would maybe adjust your grip. Now, let's say that you are leaving the face open, you strengthen your grip, right? But you still leave the face open. Then what I would try to feel like is that you're really closing the face as you're coming down, right? You're really turning this handle as you're coming down to get that face closed. That's what I would try to do. If you're leaving the face open, let's say you've weakened your grip and you're actually closing the face, and you've already tried weakening the grip a little bit, you don't want to weaken it anymore, then I would try to feel like you're not rolling over the face at all. I feel like you're almost holding the face open through contact. These are just feelings, right? So what we want to do is adjust our feel to get the desired result. So you did something technical, that's going to be the easiest thing to do. If that doesn't work, then I would adjust my feel to get the desired result that I would want. So rolling the face over more to get it more closed, or feeling like I'm not rolling the face at all to get the face more open at contact. Doesn't mean that's the reality of what's going on. You may feel like you're coming in and going like this and the face is wide open, but the reality is going to be more likely that you're coming in more like this. There's just less roll of the hands because you may be rolling the hands too much, right? So for path, what I would do for path is you can adjust your stance. You can open and close your stance for the path of the club, to get the path of the club to be working a little bit different. So a lot of times people will set up with their body more closed off with the driver because the ball is more forward in the stance and it helps the club to work more from the inside. That's completely fine to do. But keep in mind that these technical adjustments doesn't mean that it's going to happen, right? I can set my feet up this way, really, really close, and I can still swing over the top, right? It's not natural for me, but for someone else, this may be a natural movement, right? That may be a natural movement to do that. So what we have to keep in mind is that just as we change our feet, right? We're not robots, we're humans. You know, doesn't mean that's going to change anything. It may make it easier. If I close my stance, it's going to be easier to swing from the inside. If I open my stance, it's going to be easier to swing over the top, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to, right? I can open my stance and swing into out, right? I can do that. So I try to make a physical adjustment like that first, right? Because that's going to be the easiest thing. But keep in mind, it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen. And then if you still have the issue, then I would work on exaggerating the opposite feeling. So let's say I'm hitting a big slice, right? Or let's say I'm hitting a big pull. That'd be a better example. Let's say I'm hitting a big pull. So my ball is starting to the left and it's continuing to go to the left. No curvature on it. It's just a straight left pull shot. Well, let's say I do that and then I try closing my stance a little bit and then I still pull it, you know? So I was going like this before and I pulled it and then I closed my stance a little bit and I did it anyway. Just because I was more comfortable swinging to the left, I still did it even though I closed off my stance. Well, then once I tried that, then I would actually feel like I'm doing this. I would feel like I'm swinging really out to the right, and the reality will most likely be more straight down the path. That's more than likely what will happen. So a lot of what I recommend doing is basically adjust your stance or adjust your physical things, so grip or stance, to adjust the face and the path. And if that works, then you're good to go. That's an easy fix. But if it doesn't, because sometimes it doesn't, then I would actually change your feeling, adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. And also understand is that if the club is working down, it doesn't mean that it's open. And if the club is working up, it doesn't mean that it's closed. I can have the path can be left with an open face. That's what causes a slice. And the path can be down with a closed face. That's what causes a hook typically. All right, so let's keep moving through here. So previous question, especially with irons 8, 9, yeah. So it applies to everything. So Andrew L says, when doing 5,000 reps for grooving the putting stroke, do I have to actually hit balls, or will it still work just doing the reps without a ball? I would recommend hitting a ball because you hit a ball out on the course, right? So practice how you play is what I would try to do as much as you can. You're not likely going to get as much out of it if you do 5,000 reps just stroking the putter. So I would recommend hitting a golf ball. The reasoning for that is that, well, one, you want to practice how you play, and then two is that oftentimes you'll do things differently with a golf ball or without a golf ball there. Not as much in putting, more so like in the full swing when things are moving really, really fast, but also in putting a little bit. Oftentimes, I've worked with students with their putting, and they can take a stroke, that looks really, really great without the ball. It's nice and smooth, it's back and forth, and everything looks good. And then they add a golf ball, right? They add a golf ball, and then all of a sudden they do this, right? They flip at it, or they move their body around. They try to help it, or they're kind of guiding it, or things like that. But without the ball there, they can just sit there all day like a grandfather clock and have a perfect stroke all day. So I recommend hitting a ball. You're going to get way more out of it if you do. So I'd recommend not, wasting the time doing the reps without a ball. And plus, putting indoors, I mean, you're probably not able to go outside or something like that because, it's cold or something like that. It doesn't take a ton of space. 10 feet of space. If you have a carpeted area, that's perfect. If you don't, there's very cheap putting mats you can get online where you can do the reps there as well. So yeah, I would recommend hitting a ball for sure. So Richard H says, Q, I have gotten in the habit of collapsing my right wrist at top. I'm right-handed. This causes power failure. Is there a way to ensure a straight wrist at the top? Is attempting to bow it at the top bad? Sorry, collapse of the. I was getting ready to ask if you're left-handed or right-handed. So you're talking about getting cupping at the top. So like what I was talking about, I would say it depends on the longer swing you have, the more you can get away with that because you have more time, right? So if I have a really long swing, I'm more like this, right? Really, really long swing. I can get away with having some cup there at the top because I have a lot more time to come down here and organize that into a flatter position as I'm coming down. But let's say I have a shortish swing. I'm kind of more like in here. If I'm cupped right here, I'm usually going to be dead. There's one player on tour, Webb Simpson, fantastic player. I would kind of take a look at his swing and see, because he's kind of got a short swing and he's got a very cupped wrist. So I would maybe take a look at his swing and see how he's coming into contact. But remember, we can't come into impact like this, right? The face is going to be wide open. We have to come into impact more like this. So whatever you do in your backswing to make this happen, you have to do in the downswing. And the sooner you get rid of it in the downswing, the better. So that's why it's typically easier just not to have it in the first place. Now, there's several things you can do. You can do if you wear a watch, you can put like a fork underneath your watch band, and it'll poke you. If you do this, have that watch or have that fork to where it pokes you. That'll be some negative reinforcement for you to not do it, right? So that can keep you nice and flat as you go up to the top. But yeah, it doesn't mean you can't play good golf. It just means you've got to undo it. You're going to be better off if you have a longer swing to undo it. But if you have a shorter swing, I'd look at someone like Webb Simpson, who has a shortest swing. He's basically like this at the top, but as he comes down, he gets rid of it right away. He uncups that wrist right away, and that's what you would have to do. Personally, I think it would be easier just to go up to the top and have a flat or wrist there at the top. Now, if you have a very strong grip, right? Let's say you have a very strong grip. You have your wrist, your thumb basically on the side of the grip there. More than likely, you're going to have some cupping here at the top. You're going to look more like that, and that's fine. The club face is going to be in a good position. I wouldn't call that a power leak. If you have a weak grip and you're also cupping at the top, you can see my club face is pointing that way, right? Instead of up like it was before. So that's going to be real difficult. So I look at certain things that are going on in your swing. But yeah, if you can play good golf with that, but it's going to be difficult. It's going to be easier to have it flat. That's typically but if it's a natural thing to have it like this, and you have a hard time doing that, and it's easier for you to do this in the start of the downswing like a Webb Simpson, then that's completely fine. But if you want to work on getting it to where it's more flat at the top, I'd recommend the glove or the watch with the fork. You can also do a glove and put tees down to where the tees will poke you, will give you some feedback there. They also have a training aid online. I haven't used it, but it goes, I think, on the back of your wrist there. And if you go like that, it'll click. So it'll give you kind of an audible feedback of whether you're doing your wrist or not, as opposed to a painful feedback, which is kind of the old school way of doing it. So those are all things. But like I said, you can play good golf without. You just have to undo it when you're starting down very, very quickly. And I think that's harder to do, but everybody's different, right? All right, so let's keep moving through here. Keep your questions coming. So Carol Ann says, I found that the improved impact position video sent out to us on November 17th to be extremely helpful. It made a huge difference in how I struck my irons on both the driving range and today on the golf course. However, I'm having trouble with my 3 and 5 hybrids as the clubs are longer. Any suggestions on what kind of adjustments one can make when using hybrids? So video, so you're talking about the impact with the, I believe you're talking about the same video that somebody else was talking about earlier. Let me go back here. I just want to ensure I know which video you're talking about. Yeah, so the magic drill video. Yeah, so it's the same thing with those clubs. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that certain clubs, or not certain clubs, but longer clubs, just by nature, are going to be more difficult, right? Because they're longer, right? They're longer. The driver this is a wedge. I think this is a 56-degree wedge. And here's a driver. It's basically an entire grip length, which is probably about a foot longer, right? So just by nature, this is going to be harder to control than this. So just like a hybrid is going to be harder to control than, a 3-wood is going to be harder to control than a hybrid, and a hybrid is going to be harder to control than a 6-iron, and a 6-iron is going to be harder to control than a sand wedge. All these things, it's going to be more difficult the longer the clubs get. So we want to keep that in mind. The biggest mistake typically that I see with people using fairway woods and things like that is that they use a ball position that's way too far forward, right? So if the ball position's too far forward, it's way up here, it's going to be more difficult to get that ball first contact. So I would play all the shots that you hit off the turf in the same spot, just ahead of the middle of your stance. So your collarbone here, you've got your collarbone here. So if you're in your tilt, you got your left collarbone, right? Straight down from that is a good spot. The logo of your shirt, that's going to be a good spot. That's just ahead of the middle of my stance. That's basically where you want to see. If you look at tour players, if you look at a lot of them, you'll basically see, if you draw a line straight up from their ball fly, if the camera angle is perpendicular, you're typically going to see that ball positions basically off the neck, right? The outside of the neck right here, coming all the way down. That's going to be a little bit ahead of the middle of the stance. Typically what I see is people are playing that ball too far forward. So what ends up happening is they either got to swing over the top, or they've got a slide. If they're swinging from the inside, they got a slide. And when you slide, you can't open your body and get into that good impact position, right? So move that ball to where it's in a good position. Now, because the ground's not in the way with the driver, we want to play it more forward so that way we can hit more up on it, right? And that's, that's what we can do. But since the ground is in the way for shots off that are on the ground, we have to, play that ball a little bit further back in the stance. So that's what I'd recommend doing. But understand that it's hard to say exactly why you may be having trouble without seeing your swing. But if I had to guess, you're probably playing the ball too far forward. So I'd take a look at that. Maybe play the ball a little bit more where you do your pitching wedge, and you may have some better luck with it. Lou G says, how can I give an annual membership to my grandson? Can I pay for it and use his info so as to surprise him? I'm not really sure. Lou, I'd recommend contacting our support team. That's kind of out of my area there. So to contact our support team, just email support@topspeedgolf.com. Just send them your question there. I wish I could help you, but honestly, I'm not really sure. I'm not really involved with the membership side, the gifting membership side, and stuff like that. So, but our support team can help you with that. So just email again. It's support@topspeedgolf.com, and they should be able to help you with that. Sorry, Lou, I wish I could help with that, but I'm not really sure what that means or what if we're able to do that. So Anthony G says, sorry, I'm late. No worries. In the backswing, I tend to go back flatter. Yet on the downswing, I do not come over the top. I still maintain the inside path in the downswing. Is that all right? Should I get higher in the backswing and then drop to a lower plane? So the main thing, the most important thing, and it sounds like that's what you're doing, is getting that club to be on plane, right, in the downswing. So typically when people bring the club really far inside, what they'll do is they'll come over the top, right, in the downswing. And what you described is that you bring the club way inside and you still steepen it in the downswing, but it's under plane. So you can hit great golf shots doing this. The problem with it is if you're looking for distance, it's going to be difficult for you to get a lot of speed, right? Because if the club is bringing it way inside like this, and then you come down like this, right? There's just not a lot of space there to accelerate the club. I'm not creating enough height. But the higher I can get my hands, right, and then drop them back, the more of the longer path that this club has to take to get to the golf ball, and that gives me a lot more time to accelerate the club. So if you imagine you went sledding, right, and you went to and you were racing your buddy, right, you would want to go and you're trying to see who could get the fastest at the bottom. Well, you would want to go to the tallest hill to get the fastest, to be the fastest at the bottom. And that's kind of what's happening in the golf swing. You want to be up here as much as you can to be the fastest at the bottom. The shorter you are, the less speed that you're going to be able to generate. So you can absolutely play great golf doing that. It's just that you're just not going to have a lot of speed. Someone who has a similar ability to you is getting their hands up here, is going to be driving it past you, and is probably going to beat you because they're going to have shorter approaches into the green, and they're going to have closer proximity to the hole most likely, and they're going to have a bigger, better chances to make a birdie. Or basically, if you think about hitting driver 8-iron versus driver 5-iron, like who's going to hit it to the closest to the hole? And if you miss the green, who's going to miss the green by the less over a lot of shots? Let's say out of 100 shots, what's the average going to be? So that's what you have to look at. So if you're looking to gain speed, I would recommend getting the hands up and then shallowing them out. But if that's not a problem for you, then it's completely fine to stick with what you're doing. Ricky Fowler is someone like that. So Ricky Fowler brings the club up kind of like this, right? Like this, and then he steepens it as he's coming down, right? So, and he's not a real big guy, and he doesn't have any problem getting speed, but he's an incredible athlete. So you got to look at what's most important to you and how you can generate or what you need to do in your golf swing. But doing what you're doing, as long as the club's coming down on plane, you're going to hit straight golf shots and consistent golf shots. But if you're looking for speed, then I'd recommend getting the hands up higher. So we just got a bunch of questions in here. So Bryson N says, please elaborate flatten swing. So flatten swing, typically what that means is getting the club shallower, or if you're meant, or are you saying flatter swing? Elaborate on what flatter swing is. Are you asking Anthony? Not really sure exactly what you're asking, but basically if you swing flat in the backswing, it's more like the arms across the chest. The arm's not really elevating. So it's more rotation of your hips, rotation of your shoulders that's bringing the club up, right? So it's that. So if you imagine if there's no elevation of the arms at all, right? Because basically the golf swing consists of rotation of the hips, rotation of the shoulders, and the lifting of the arms. That's basically what the golf, in a basic sense, that's what the golf swing is, right? So if I didn't lift my arms at all, right? If I didn't lift my arms at all, this is what the golf swing would look like. Right, so if you have a flat swing, it means that you don't lift your arms very much. So if I didn't lift them at all, it would look like this. If I lifted them a little bit, it would look like this, right? If I lifted them a lot, right, I'd be like Bubba. I'd be up here. So that's a lot of lifting in the swing. Now, if you're someone who has a very vertical swing, it would look a lot like Bubba there. So what he's saying is that he doesn't have a lot of lift in his arms in the swing, but a lot of times when people swing flat, they'll tend to go like this. They'll come down steep. They'll kind of lift their arms out over the body, because what happens is the momentum's generated that makes them want to go like this, right? And the club gets really, really far behind them, and they're trying to get it in front, right? So typically what you're going to see in most tour players is the swing is more vertical, somewhere in here, and then they drop it down on the plane. That would be flattening in the downswing. That's shallowing the club. All right, so Diane C says, my backswing appears to be very steep, and I come from over the top. Excuse me. I have a challenge with shallowing the club. I can do it sometimes, but not any other drills to work on. So basically, what sounds like Diane is saying is that you have a very steep backswing, meaning we have a lot of lift in the swing. Now, the reason why you might be having trouble is that you may not have a lot of turn in the swing. So again, we want to have horizontal turning components. So you would call that the hips and the shoulders, right? And then we want to have vertical components, which is going to be like the arms going up. So if somebody has a swing that is that basically they don't turn very much, so maybe they turn their hips a little bit and turn their shoulders a little bit, but they have just a lot of lifting, so it's more like this. Well, the hands don't get very deep, right? So the hands don't really get back here. Like this would be a vertical swing. They're more right there. Well, from there, it's gonna be hard to get the club to go behind you. You're gonna tend to come over the top. So it's hard to say without seeing your swing what's going on there. But my guess would be is that you don't have you're not fully turning. So I would try to have a very, it's fine to have a vertical swing, but get the hands vertical and back here. So that way you can swing from the inside. If they're vertical and they're just kind of up here, then you're just going to swing over the top. Typically when you do that. So get the hands more deep, and that can help you to be in a better position there. So basically feel like your back's up against the wall here, and you're trying to get your hands kind of on that wall behind you. It's going to feel maybe like you're like this, but if you're used to going like this, it's probably going to be more like that, which is going to be a good position to be in. So Diane had another question here. Says, can you talk about the position of the knees throughout the swing? Knees throughout the swing. This is correct. My previous question. So knees throughout the swing. So initially here, we just want to have a little bit of flex in the knees. Just initially. I see all the time too much flex, butt too much out over the heels. That's going to typically cause some issues in the swing. A lot of times it causes kind of standing up in the backswing and things like that. So a little bit of knee flex is what we're looking for. And then as you go up to the top, your lead knee will typically work in a little bit toward the golf ball, and your trail knee will typically straighten a little bit to push your hip back. So that would look something like this, right? So my lead knee is moved in a little bit, and my trail knee has kind of straightened out a little bit. What I see all the time, what people make a mistake of, is that we try to keep our legs locked. We try to keep our knees locked, like keep the flex in our knees, and they kind of end up going like this, right? Well, if you do that, you can't really move. You're not going to be able to turn your hips or turn your shoulders. So Diane, what you talked about before was having a very steep swing. So maybe this is what's going on with you, and it's not allowing you to rotate your hips. So let those knees be free, right? Get a little bit of flex in them and let them be free. Let them move. Don't be afraid to let this leg straighten out and let that knee move in a little bit. That's completely fine. Now, as we start down, we want to get some flex in our legs. We want to reflex those legs, and that's going to allow us to turn our hips. A lot of times what happens is maybe people will be in a good position at the top, and then what they do is they just slide their hips and then kind of move their hips toward the golf ball, right? And that's going to cause early extension. That's going to cause flipping and all sorts of things. So what we want to do is when we start down, we want to reflex those legs. And when that happens, the knees are typically going to move apart, right? Especially this lead knee. This lead knee is going to kind of move out and around, right? So as we shift our weight and we're reflexing our legs, the knees move apart a little bit. The lead knee is going to move out and around. And then from there, you can push into the ground and rotate. And that's when this lead knee is going to more kick in when that happens. And then you come all the way around. And basically the knees dang near come together in the full finish here, right? So my lead knee is going to work out and it's straightened out. And then it's bringing my trail knee close to it. Now it's not going to be like this, but it's going to bring it close to it as I come around into the full finish there. So that's basically what the knee movement is. Like I said, the knee movement that I see that's poor is too much knee flex at address, no knee flex when they're coming down. They keep the knees kind of straight and slide. And or what will happen and when we come through impact is people will come in and they'll keep this knee flexed as they're coming through and throw the club at it. We need to reflex the knees here and then push and straighten out that lead leg as we're coming through impact. Now, don't mistake me here. I don't want the lead leg typically straight at impact. Typically, if it's straight at impact, you've lost all your ability to really turn your hips because you have nothing left to push, right? And a lot of times what will happen is you'll flip from there. So what we want to be doing is getting that flex in the lead leg, the knee working out and around. And then you want to be pushing and straightening that lead leg, not getting it straight at impact, but getting it to where it's straightening and continuing to open up. Typically, that lead leg won't completely straighten out until after the release of the club, and you're coming all the way into a full finish there. So that's basically the knee movement. A little bit of detail there, but those are typically the things that I see where people run into issues with the knees is just trying to keep them locked. All right. So Graham C says, when I get up to the top, go to weight shift and squat, as I start to turn, I tend to lose my height and then my spine angle. Any tips on this? Thanks. Let me read that again. When I get up to the top, go to weight shift and squat, as I start my turn, I tend to lose height and lose spine angle. Any tips? So sounds like you're kind of have a reverse spine angle, like you're going like this, right? So what we want to do is make sure that we're staying, our body is staying kind of over our chest, is feeling like it's over our trail foot. So I'm going up to the top here and I'm keeping my spine angle, nice and stable. And I'm keeping my chest over my trail foot. That's what I would try to feel like. And then you're getting your weight shift, and it's this whole piece right here in this angle is moving that way. That's what I would try to feel like. Don't try to shift your weight just with your upper body, because that's what a lot of people do is they'll get here and then they try to shift their weight with this way. The other thing that I see is people try to lengthen their swing. So they're trying to get their swing as long as they possibly can. And in doing that, they go like this, right? So don't try to lengthen your swing by losing your spine angle. If you can only go with your swing this far, right, and keep your spine angle, that's completely fine. That's just the way that you're built. You know, you're not Dustin Johnson and able to get the club up over your head and stay in your spine tilt. You know, he's crazy flexible. You may not be that flexible, so it's okay. It's not going to help you to go like this. You're going to hit you're actually going to have more speed having a shorter swing and staying in this posture, because you're going to be able to get a much better weight shift. You're going to be able to get that club in the right spot. Whereas if you're like this, now you've just got to make a ton of compensations to bring that club into the golf ball. And it's usually going to include pieces that slow you down, which we don't want to do, right? So keep that spine angle, keep that chest over your trail foot. It's okay. It's going to feel probably like your swing is a little bit shorter if you're someone who's doing this to make the swing go longer, but that's okay. All right. So just get it back here as much as you can without going like this, and then get your weight shift and feel your whole mass moving that way, not just your head shifting, but your whole, so the hips, the torso, everything moving in that direction. So Louis V says, is hitting hybrid clubs the same as hitting fairway woods? I mean, it's not the same club, but yeah, I mean, it's basically, if you're hitting it off the ground, it's basically the same. Pretty much any shot that you hit off the ground is going to be the same. You can play a hybrid or a fairway wood slightly forward in your stance, but the biggest mistake that I see is that people play it like in the same position they play their driver, like off their lead shoulder. So driver, typically off the lead shoulder is where that's going to be. And I see people play their hybrids and their fairway woods off of the ground, very close to that same position, in that same position or very close to it. And that makes it very, very difficult to make good contact in the downswing. Basically, you have to get really far forward in order to make that happen. And typically what's going to happen is people are going to really slide, or they're going to come over the top to make that happen. So what I'd rather you do is have that ball, you know, closer to where you would play a pitching wedge, you know, more, or an 8-iron or whatever iron, you know, more off your collarbone here, straight down from your lead ear, you know, somewhere in that area. That's going to be, you know, very slightly forward of the middle of your stance. That's going to be a good spot for all of that. Now you can play the ball slightly forward of that if you want to, if you're still making great contact from there. But the key is not to play it way up here, because, you know, the ground's in the way. You're going to typically top it, chunk it, slide too much, and flip or come over the top, or a combination of several of those pieces. So Bryson and me said shallow. I meant, yeah, so flat and shallow, interchangeable terms typically. So Anthony G says, thanks. I do hit with a little draw, but wanted to know if I was hurting my distance, and you answered that. Thanks again. Yeah, so I think you're the one who asked about if you have a flat swing, is it hurting your distance? Yeah, so I'd recommend check out that skyscraper drill from the 20-minute distance fix. It's in week 3 of the 20-minute distance fix, skyscraper drill. So if you click the instruction tab, then you can click the 20-minute distance fix. And then it's in week 3 of the 20-minute distance fix, that skyscraper drill. Check it out. It's a good one for getting that up there. So Len D says, hi Q, since I'm left-handed, sometimes have trouble translating Clay's instructions. Can you clarify the hand rotation between getting from the top of the backswing to shallow the downswing? I hit the ground a lot, even though I think I'm shallowing. So basically for a left-hander, right, that would be to shallow the club. That would be turning the doorknob to the left. That's the feeling that you want to have. So with your left hand, it's going to be turning like this, right? So you're turning the doorknob to the left. With your right hand, it's going to be turning the doorknob to the left. That's what's shallowing the club. And you can see how my left elbow works in like this, and my right elbow works out like that. That's going to shallow the club, right? And get that club working from the inside. Now, if you're hitting the ground a lot, that means that you're probably hanging back. My guess is that you probably used to swing over the top. So you probably used to swing like this. So when you swing over the top, it moves the low point of your swing forward. And if you shift your weight, if you shift your weight and the low point of your swing is forward, you're going to hit the ground after the golf ball, way after the golf ball, or you're going to top the golf ball, right? You're going to chop down into it. So a lot of times when people are coming over the top like this, what they'll do is they'll hang back in their swing when they come over the top. So that way they're not chopping down the golf ball. They can kind of come through and hit and pick the ball off the turf or take a little bit of a divot. So if now you still hang back, right? So now if you shallow the club, get that club working from the inside, and then you hang back, now you're going to hit the ground a mile before the golf ball. So make sure that when you're shallowing out the club, that you're now getting that weight shift to the lead side. So that way you can come down and hit the ball the way that you want to. So I would check that out on video and see if you're not shifting your weight or not. My guess is that you're probably more on your, what would be your left foot. You're probably hanging back on your left foot, being left-handed, and hitting the ground before the golf ball. Get on your lead foot, get on your right foot at impact, so that way when you're shallowing out, you can make ball first contact. All right, thanks everybody for joining me today. We'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. So if you do have any questions, we'll be back here tomorrow, Friday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you all next time.